can you hear me? This is Sean. Can you hear me? I see my name, but I don't see my picture. How do I, oh, start
I hear
video.
you, Sean.
Yep.
There I am.
Okay, there we are.
Is this Sean, my Sean? Is this Sean that I was messaging with? Oh, I don't hear you.
I think we're all muted here.
Yeah, they're probably
Yeah.
muted.
Yeah.
No, it's a different Sean. Okay.
No, I'm the one you were emailing.
Oh, okay. Your name was spelled differently. Well, hi.
Hi, nice to be here.
I'm waiting for somebody else.
And we're ready when you are, Leslie.
Okay. I want to say hello to Elise K. If that's Michelle's sister. Wow, we go back a long time if that's the Elise I know. It's Leslie Cohen. Hi, everybody. Are we ready to get started? Okay. I am Leslie Rogowski, the creative director for the Beadsmith, and I'm so excited to be here for Michael's to teach a Zoom workshop on the Centerline cuff. Now, the Centerline is a whole family of components, and what I'm going to teach you today is the technique that you can apply throughout the whole family of Centerline components. And I'll give you a little sneak peek. And I'll show you these again later. Pendants, earrings, connector charms, other kinds of cups. Whoops. I'll show you that later. But what you're going to learn today is how to sew Delica beads into the whole family of Centerline. You're learning it through the cuff. Now, the cuffs are very shiny. This is one of the rhodium plated ones. And they're very small beads, right? So from all my years of teaching, I have learned that a bigger kind of a teaching demo is going to work better. So I've come up with a little piece of foam core that has holes in it, and I'm going to show you the technique on this. And what it represents is the little window that's in the Centerline cuff, which if I hold this up, you can see there's holes evenly spaced along either side of the window. That's where your columns of Delica beads are going to line up. Now I have this cuff covered with just the sticky part of Post-it notes to keep the shine from distracting when I do the demo on the actual cuff. There is a full tutorial, you guys. There is a link to it in a couple places in the chat window where my assistant and Sergeant at Arms, Leslie Pope, is going to be communicating with everybody, since I can only watch two things at once, my mat and the screen, and she's going to talk to you and answer questions. But I want you to know that this tutorial that you can download, this PDF, has the materials that you need for this. It has step-by-step instructions with illustrations that are going to repeat what I'm showing you today. And also, speaking of repeating, this is all being recorded, most of you know. So during the course of my demo, I encourage you not to try to work along with me if you already have the materials. Watch what I'm doing, take notes, get a hold of the tutorial, and then come back and you can re-watch the recording of this and have a much better sense of empowerment about what you're gonna do. So the tutorial has nice pictures. It has the whole list of Michael's, of the Delica colors that Michael sells with the store numbers, and patterns. including the one that I'm going to do today, which is this one right here, the red and turquoise and black and white. It's all the same pattern using different colors, nice big charts. You'll be able to figure that out and pick your own colors, matching up to what you get from Michael's. And remember, those are size 11 Delicas. So that leads me to a good place to introduce you to the materials we're going to use today. So let's get this out of the way. So there we go. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need is, of course, the centerline cuff. You want to make sure that you have the cuff that has the 7 rows, that mean the 7 beads, which means that each row that's coming across here has 7 Delicas. They're available in this silver, the rhodium, and gold. So you can pick. I'm using the silver. Get yourself a pebble, a Beadsmith pebble, which is the coolest little bead storage, this little egg, and it has 2 size 12s and 2 size 10 needles stuck in here. So you're really good to go for a lot of things. I pulled one of the 12s out to use for today. So you have that. Of course, you're going to look for your Delica colors and pick your favorites. I'm using Fireline 6-pound smoke. This double pack comes with 4-pound and 6-pound. For this project, you could use 4-pound as well. Fireline, I like Fireline because it's very durable and it doesn't stretch when you use it. So you can pull it nice and snug. And even though these holes are really smooth and nicely finished in the center line, it's just extra protection. You can use other cords and threads as long as they fit through the Delica beads at least 3 times. And you want to make sure that it's going to fit into your size 12 needle too, to string your needle. So we have that. Huge fan of the thread zap. I can't suggest this enough. This is a really cool thing. It has a nice protective cover on it. It runs on a single AA battery. And when I push the button on the side, let's see, you can see the end get hot there. That just sizzles. You can get in nice and close carefully to trim your thread. So for instance, I'll give you a quick demo of this. Here's a piece of Fireline between my fingers, and I'm going to take this to it, right through it. So it gives you a nice, clean, kind of a soldered end almost. So I'm going to leave this out so I can use it later. Let's see. So we have the beads, the needles, the Fireline, and the center line. Are we ready to get started? Good. Let's move this out of the way. I'm bringing in my little teaching aid here. So this is going to be the front or the outside of your center line, what's facing you. When I turn it over where it says back, that's going to represent the inside, because you're going to be turning this back and forth as we go through the stitching. I'm just using some big beads here. They happen to be big cylinder beads, so you can see them. And I'm using just a generic cord that's visible for you guys to watch. So I have sewn a stopper bead on, and I'm going to pull that off so you, in case you don't know how to do a stopper bead. A stopper bead is used just to keep your work from sliding off and keep your thread in place as you're working. So you're going to thread your needle, and you're going to pull the stopper bead down to leave, in this case, enough of a tail to thread on a needle and weave into your work once you have a couple rows done. So I've just strung a bead and I'm going to sew through the bead again. So it locks it on there, but it slides when I pull on it, so later I can just pull it off. This is going to prevent me and you from pulling all your thread out. So you're going to go to, these holes are parallel. They're parallel on your bracelet. You're going to start from back to front through the first hole. And then you're going to string your row of beads. I'm going to pick up 7 because there are 7 in your cuff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you're going to pull them down. Whoops. So remember, I strung back to front, out the front. Now I'm going to go from front to back. Get this out of the background so you can see here. So now I'm coming out here. Now this is a circuit that you're going to do around and around, but every time you cross the window, you need to go through your column of beads. So I'm going to pull my beads up into the window and sew back down through them, coming from the back through the column of beads. All right, now do you see how this thread is not attached? But on the front, you have a thread coming across from the window to the hole. You want to make sure you always have the front and back connected. So now I'm going from back to front through that first hole, and it's going to connect that column. There you go. But, and here's the secret to making this really look good. You have to cross over to the next hole, and you want to make sure you're doing that on the back or the inside of your center line. So you're going to now, so the thread's gone through your column of bead twice. Now you're going to come up and go through the column of beads a third time, coming from back to front, and you're going to go from front to back, so you end up on the back. But remember to go through all the beads, don't skip any, and pull that through. Front to back, so you end up on the back. Now that first column of beads is there. And we're going to move over to the second hole for the second column. And I'm going to go from back to front, just like when we started. And do you see how this is just a nice little crossover? We're going to see how it forms a neat little zigzag pattern along the back. So even though it's not going to be seen when you wear it, it's nice and tidy. Craft is everything. All right, turn it over. I'm ready for the second column, and I'm doing just what I did the first time. It's coming from back to front. I'm going to pick up my column of beads. 4, 5, 6, 7, string them down. Now I'm going to sew front to back. And again, remember, this is being recorded. This is also all in the tutorial. Everything that I'm saying is shown to you in illustrations and in words. So back to front, front to back. Turn it over. Now on the cuff, you'll be working on the inside of the cuff. And I'm going to push my beads up through that window to give me access so that I can sew them on the back. And you want to make sure you go through all those beads. not that one. There we go. There we go. Okay, now again, can you see how this is attached on the front but not on the back? So you're going to go from back to front through the second hole. They're always going to be parallel. And here we are in the front again, and we need to cross over to the third hole. So we want to work our thread through to go from front to back. We're going to sew back up through the column of beads. And sew through front to back. And then turn it over to the back. And I'm going to step over to the next hole so that I'm coming from back to front. And you can see how this alternates. The zigzag of thread on the back will look nice and neat as you go through. So I'm back to front. This is the technique, you guys. This is what you do for the entire length. And I'm going to continue on this larger version so that it really sinks in. But all these other things are, this is how you do this. This is how you make this. This is the inside back, the front. And I wanted to show you the other things like the, these are all done this way, where you're going back to front, front to back 3 times around through the column of beads in these little windows. I mean, look at this cute feather. It's got loops on either end so you can make it as a connector, just one strand of beads. All right, we're at to row 3. Any questions out there yet? People watching? Does this help? This having the bigger version, does this help you guys? I'm going to string my 7 beads again. So I'm coming back to front, meaning I'm stringing through from the back. Here's my thread coming out the front. String your beads. Now, if you're following a pattern, you would be looking at the chart and counting down because it's only 7 beads. Oh, this row, I need 2 red, 3 black, 2 red. All right, front to back.
So Leslie, yes, everyone says this is very helpful.
Good.
And I have answered the questions as they have come up in the chat. So
Thank you, Leslie.
you're welcome.
Yep. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, Leslie Pope, she is my better half at the Beadsmith. They call us Team Leslie. Yes, we are both Leslie. We are actually both Leslie Ann, too. Okay. So we came from back to front, strung the beads, front to back, go to the back. Now we're going to sew through the column of beads. So I'm taking my finger and pushing them up to make it easier to sew through them. Stay on the back. Now I'm going to go back to front and connect this column to the other side. Now again, here we are on the front and we're ready to cross to the next hole, but we want to work our way back to cross over on the back, the inside. So I'm going to go through a 3rd time. And you can see we're going around in a very logical sequence. Back up through the column of beads from front to back. Turn it over. Now we're ready to cross over to the 4th hole. Can you see how neat and tidy this is? And you can see that they alternate sides of the window where the zigzag is. So it comes down and zigzags over and comes up and zigzags over and come down and zigzags over. So you can know by remembering the pattern of the thread this way that you're doing it correctly. And on the front, there should be no zigs, no zags, just straight up and down. Let's do one more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm only doing 7 because the cuff has 7. And then I'm going to move to the cuff because I think you guys probably are getting this process now. It's coming from back to front, go from front to back, turn it over, pull your column. So your thread's coming from front to back. Take your finger, push the beads up into that space that I'm calling a window. And all center lines have this space. It may only be one row of beads. There may be multiple rows. They could be longer and shorter. And you can use other beads besides the Delicas, but they're designed for the Delicas. And the ones that have single thread paths, which I'll show you again, and some of the other components, the Delicas are the best fit. Okay, row 4, coming to the back for the second pass through this column. From back to front. Because you want to make sure that your thread is passing on both sides of the cuff to hold it there. Now, here's the front, and we want to cross over to the next hole, so we have to go through the column again to get from front to back. When you're working with the smaller beads, the Delicas, it can be easy to skip beads when you're sewing through the back part again. So just take your time and make sure. You don't have to do it all in one swoop. Now I'm going to go through from front to back. And here we are in the back again for another crossover. And your thread is now coming out from back to front, and you're ready to keep going. So, all right, beaders, let's do the real deal. I'm going to set this aside. And I'm going to bring in a cuff, and I'm going to start on this and do a couple rows. Let me find my pre-threaded needle. Here we go. Now I actually have the, I guess, 1 3/4 that I suggested on here, but I'm going to shorten it just as I work this. I'm going to take my zapper up to my thread. This gets really hot, you guys, so this is not a tool for young beaders and crafters, and you just want to make sure you don't ever touch it. It can be hot even if it's not red. So you're going to push the button right here. There you go. Get rid of my extra thread. And I'm going to reveal my little tiny beads already set up under here. Da, 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 da. All right. So here are my size 11 Delicas. And I'm going to bring up the pattern page from the tutorial and show you a little trick on how to keep track. too as you're doing this. I'll fold my page up to the one that I'm doing, which is this one here. Now, can you see how it's a nice grid and the colors are numbered or lettered? That refers to the actual colors that are listed in your tutorial. So you'll know that the color that's referred to as color A is this particular red. There's actually 2 reds. And in order to keep track, if it's easier for you, get yourself something that's a straight edge, like a little ruler, and you can just set it down on your chart and move it over from row to row to kind of keep track for where you are. So I have a stopper bead already on here. It's just a little Delica. And I'm going to go through the first hole from back to front. Don't pull too hard on your stopper bead because they do slide and they could slide off, but it's pretty much on there. Now I can see that my first row is going to be 7 of the red, so I'm going to pick up 7 red. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Coming from back to front, I'm now going front to back. I'm going to hold this. Let's get this bead out of the way. So, can you see how the beads, the red beads are there? I'm pushing them up in the window. They were strung from front to back. Now I'm going to sew through that column again, pushing up with my finger, carefully making sure to not skip any beads. One more. All right, so I have the 7 beads are on my needle. Let's see, there we go. Pull that through. And you're going to go through from back to front. Now we're ready to cross over, but we're on the front. So we have to do our 3rd pass through that column. Through the column of beads. You can see my needle through there. Coming from back to front. And now I go from front to back through that same first hole. And there's your first row. I'm ready to cross over to the 2nd hole, do that little zigzag from back to front. Another thing to pay attention to, because again, the cuffs are very shiny and these are small holes, don't skip holes. You'll see it right away when you start to string if it's off to the side. So now I'm coming from back to front again, and I'm ready for my 2nd column. Now, according to my chart, I have 3 reds, a black, and 3 reds. So let's do that.
I also wanted to mention again, Leslie, that you put Post-it notes over your cuff because the cuff is so shiny.
Thank you, Leslie. Yes, the cuff.
Someone wanted to know why you had Post-it notes on your.
The cuff is covered for filming, just so that it's not, because it's so reflective, you would not be able to see what I was doing. You can see how reflective even just the little bars where the holes are. All right, so coming from back to front, I have my 7 beads, and now I want to go into the 2nd hole. From front to back, turn this over. You can see I'm turning it all around just so I have a comfortable way to access this. Some of the things that I will run into that you may run into is getting your thread caught when you pull the loops. Just slide it off. You may accidentally loop around the cuff. No biggie, no stress. It's beading. All right, now you're going to put your finger underneath that second row and push it through, because you want to keep your thread on the back, on the inside, and you want to sew through this whole column. Take your time and wiggle your needle through. And I am using a size 12 needle. So there you go. You can see the needles going through all of them on the inside, on the back. Now you're going to sew from back to front through that second hole. So now your column is attached, but here we go. We have to cross over to the third hole, and we want to do that on the back. So we're going to sew through that second column again. Your thread is coming from back to front, just like when you started. And you're going to sew through those beads nice and carefully. You can see that it goes through all the beads. Pull that nice and snug and go from front to back. Where we're now ready to zigzag over, cross over to the third hole. So we're now working on the third row. I'm going to go right through there from back to front. It's a nice system. It's a really nice system. And what's really fun too as you do this is watching the pattern grow. So you're going to keep doing this, following the chart. I'm going to switch out now. I actually have a cuff almost finished. Ta-da! Oh, I didn't put the little Post-its on this, but I think we're good. So you can see all the rows nice and neat and straight. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get you to see the zigzags on the inside. Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, that's all right. It was much easier to see it on this. Trust me, it looks like this on the back with the little Fireline threads. All right, let's see where we are on our pattern. I had 1 red, a black, 3 blue, and a black. Did you see how I moved my roller over to show me where I was? So I just finished that. That's this column here. I'm going to move this over, and my next column is 2 red, a black, a blue, a black, and 2 red. Two red, a black, a blue, a black, and 2 red. You will also notice right away if your pattern is off, you'll see the beads because it's a small pattern and a small amount of beads. So let's work. So I'm coming from back to front. There we go. I know how I want to go from front to back.
So we have a question, Leslie.
Yes.
So if you run out of thread, what do you suggest? How do you suggest someone add in their thread in this
Well,
technique?
it's much better to not run out of thread.
Okay.
The pattern tells you actually a little bit more than you even need. It's always better to have a lot of extra thread. If you do, because this is a very refined piece of beadwork, small beads, it's better not to do any knots. What I would suggest is if I was to run out of thread at this point, or as long as you have a few rows, just the way you would end and add thread and other pieces of beadwork without knots, you would leave yourself, you know, don't run out with like a little tiny little bit of thread left. Leave yourself, if you end up with this much and you know you're going to need more, start a new piece of thread following the exact same thread path that you just sewed for like 3 or 4 rows. You're going to go back and forth and over and around and back and forth and over and around for 2 or 3 rows and come out in position where your thread is ending. Then you're going to take your ending thread, which should, you know, have a needle already on it, and you're going to sew back into the piece. So this is a very traditional ending and adding thread method, is to sew back into the piece following existing thread paths with your old thread after you've added a new thread. And I always leave my old thread to do second, so I remember where I'm exiting. On some pieces it's more complicated. But my advice is give yourself plenty of thread. You can always, I don't know about you, but I have baggies of like relatively long practical lengths of Fireline that I didn't need, that I can use for another project to add a clasp, or where I may only need 12 or 15 inches of thread. So you can throw these all into a baggie. And P.S. if you end up not using those, I understand if you put it outside, out of the bag. The birds love to use it for building their nests. So there you go. But the real answer to that question is use enough thread for these projects. Okay. Let's see, where were we? So we came from back to front, strung the beads, went through front to back. Now we're going to go up from back to front. The thread is coming out. We're going to sew through that row of beads that we just strung. Make sure we string them all. There we go. Got them all on there. And I'm going to come through now from back to front through that same hole that we're working. And we're ready to cross over, so I have to move to the back. I'm going to sew back up the column. This is the third pass, so that I am now going from front to back. And I can step over to the next hole. Almost done, 2 more rows. My pattern shows 3 red, 1 black, and 3 red. You might not even need the needle. I mean, the ruler to keep track. They're pretty small patterns. All right. Coming from front to back. Next to last row, we're going to go through the row again by pushing it up with your finger into what's left of the window. Sew carefully through the row again. Make sure you've got all your beads strung. Come from back to front. And now to go to the back, we're going to sew through that third time through this next to the last row of beads. There we go. From front to back, so we can cross over in that nice, neat little zigzag. It's the last row. Isn't this a fun part? When you get to that very end, it's like the cherry on a sundae. Yes, saved it for last. Okay, and the last row is all red again. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Coming from back to front, string your beads, go from front to back. Push the beads up so you can access them in the window. I'm using my other finger there. Sew through the row of beads, don't skip any. One of the other things I like about using Fireline in a project that has repeated thread paths is it's really almost unpierceable. when you use a softer beading thread, you have to be very careful that you don't run your needle through the thread that's already there. So there we go. Now we're going to come from back to front. And I'm going to go through it again, even though we're not going to step up because this is the last row. So what I would do is reverse my course and make my thread path so I end up on the back. And I'm going to sew back into the beadwork without any knots. There's no tension on this beadwork, so it is not going to come out. I'll sew from front to back to get to the back. I'm just going to sew once more up that last row. I don't even have to cross over. There's now 4 thread paths through these beads. So you might have to really push hard for this last one so that your needle comes all the way through. Get that last bead on there. Come on, there we go. And very carefully, where's my zap? Here it is. I'm going to, you can use the scissors too, but I just like these. I'm going to pull my thread perpendicular from my work. Turn on the zap, and I do this so that I don't touch my work that's there and just touch it to it. And by the way, that's how I finished in the beginning when I sewed, when I took the stopper bead off, threaded that tail on a needle and just wove once into the first one and zapped it off. These cuffs have an adjustability to them, by the way, which is really nice, so that you definitely have some play in your wrist size. Pretty cool, huh?
Hey, Leslie, did you mention that the other colors in the pattern are also geared towards the Delicas that are available at Michael's?
Yes,
Okay.
they're all Michael's colors, and in the tutorial, there is a list of all the colors that are in these charted patterns. So it says color 1, 2, 3 through 9, and then it goes A, B, C, D down through G. It gives the Michael's item number and the name of the color. So when you go to get your Delica beads, you'll be able to see on the label the number of the color that you want.
So
Here's
we're
the illustration that shows the zigzag on the back. So these are nice big illustrations, you guys. And combined the fact that you have the written tutorial and this is being recorded, you can go back and revisit this. You'll see me working on the large piece. I want to show you some of the other things now that you'll totally get, right? These plate cuffs are really cool. Very easy. They have a little screw that comes off. So this whole plate comes off of the actual cuff. It makes it really manageable to bead only 3 beads. The feather, I love this. It's just a single row and you're gonna do it the same way. Back to front, around, through the column a couple times, weave the thread back in until you feel that tension and you're finished. This is a showstopper, this one. This is called the sundial pendant. There are single rows and you do the crossover just like you did on the cuff when you get to the inside. So you don't have a lot of thread showing and you don't have thread showing on the outside. There are little holes at the end of each of these These are all skinny little windows for just one little column of beads, but you can do this really cool like color gradation and ombre and stuff. But to see how big it is, you can see on my hand. What a knockout. Oh my gosh. On a nice chain. And then again, there's the things that are just really simple. Here's a little window in this lovely pendant with, again, just 3 beads. Leslie Pope made up these samples. Nice graphic. Again, 2 rows of parallel holes, just like in the cuff, just like what we did here. And you're going to do it the exact same way. So the little crossovers, it's kind of hard to see because there's a reflection. But keep everything nice and neat. The cuff, which is the largest piece that I showed you, I think right now, calls for 1 3/4 yards of Fireline. So you can kind of estimate. I mean, you could even like measure the distance here and figure it out mathematically if you're so inclined.
I think that one was less than 1 yard.
Okay. All right, so the pendant, do you remember, Leslie? I haven't done this one in a while.
That was probably a 1.5 yards, because the
Okay.
first one I did with a yard was not long enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you definitely, it's much more preferable to not run out of thread with these. But, you know, I wanted to, you can see them here to look for in the stores so you can see the packaging. There's a couple more varieties of things that you can do. There's that. There's silver and gold. Here's another plate cuff. And funny thing, Leslie and I made the gold one, she made the silver one, and we both went for patriotic. Well, there are only 3 beads, so there you go. And again, the plate comes off, so you just have this little component right here. The cuff is whole. I'll show you the inside. It's really nice and smooth when you wear it. I mean, there's the little backs of the screws, which are very smooth. These are fabulously made. I mean, really, really nicely finished. The plating is lovely, very rich. So with a little bit of beadwork, you can do some pretty cool stuff. Were there other questions?
Not yet, and you've got like 13 minutes, like 14 minutes left.
All right. Should I give a sneak peek of what's coming up in October?
Yeah.
Did we do that? Okay. The next class that I'm doing for the Beadsmith for Michael's is the boho necklace. It will be October 6th, again, starting at noon Central Time. Let's cover this up so we have fewer distractions. I don't know about anybody else, but I work with layers of this bead mat. So I just put stuff down and down and down. That way I can change what I'm doing as my bosses tell me what to do. So here are 3 necklaces. And once again, I'm going to show you the technique that you use with, where's my tools? This is the coolest thing, sorry. Here we go. We're going to use the looper for this, which makes consistently sized eyes in wire so that you can link components together, making the same size loop over and over and over again without having to try to remember where you put it on your round nose pliers, and it makes it so fast. These beads all come from a box, an assortment already chosen for you. So one of the cool things and the fun things about doing the boho is, you know, it's kind of whatever you want. There's also a tutorial that reminds you how to use the looper with photographs. It actually will give you the layout for these necklaces, these 2 necklaces that you see here, and tells you what components I picked out of the box. So this necklace is symmetrical. You can see that it runs the same on each side, but this one was really fun. And I talk a lot in the tutorial, and I will during the class, about design, and that things have to be balanced in color and proportion, even if they're asymmetrical. This weighs nothing. Oh my gosh, so cool. So go to michaels.com and sign up for the boho necklace. Again, that's October 6th at 12 o'clock Central Time. And you're going to learn how to use the looper. The PDF will be available again, and it will also list all the items that you get from Michaels, from the tool to the box of beads to the wire.
Yeah, and it looks like you hooked a few people in already, Leslie.
All right, then. Woohoo! Yeah, this again, it was really, really fun to make these. I do wire work, but I do not consider myself a wire worker. I will, you know, do it when I need to for my bead work. And when I was a magazine editor, I kind of had to learn everything. But what was really fun about this, and what the focus really of the workshop is 2 things. One is how the right tool for the right job empowers you to get things done efficiently, professionally, and quickly, or more quickly. And the other focus is on the design, looking at what's balanced in scale. We're going to talk about color and proportion, spacing. So you'll learn if you want to hook things with jump rings, or you want to connect them together by making the space between your elements bigger and smaller, or longer and shorter. And of course, don't we love to layer? So I couldn't stop with just 1 necklace, so I made 3 necklaces to layer. And you are going to learn the technique to be able to do all this and pick other colors. I think they have other assortment boxes and everything. It's just really fun. This happens to be the Southwest collection from Bead Landing. But I have to tell you, I can't say enough about this tool. And I want to mention this, I'm going to mention again in the class too, that I have very small hands. So sometimes tools are more challenging for me because it's a wide span. So I'm going to show you in the class how I use my work table to help me out, so that I don't actually have to wrap my fingers around this. I can lay it on the surface and press down with my other hand. So, you know, that's when you teach as much as I do, as much as Leslie Pope, and when you've been beading or working in wire as long as we have, you learn these things. You learn them from other teachers, you figure it out on your own, and we want to share it. We want to share these tips because maybe they'll work for you too. Remember again, this is being recorded. You're going to go back to the website and be able to watch. Everything lives there forever and ever. So you can go back and watch all the classes, the one you took today, the one you're going to take with me on the 6th, the PDFs. Let's see. Was there anything else? Looking forward to the boho necklace. Great. Great. It's I'm looking forward to teaching it with you guys, really, because it's just so much fun. And so much fun to end up with this amazing, you know, gypsy queen thing going on. Bohemian, which I will confess is not my usual style, but I've already worn these. I had to. They match this red shirt I had. Check it out. Woohoo! Well, I want to thank you guys too for joining in on behalf of the Beadsmith and of course Michael's. They have just wonderful things, and I'm looking forward to more workshops coming up. So really, really glad that everybody liked the class. Remember, you can click on the link for the tutorial in the chat window right now if you haven't done that already. And
It'll also be emailed.
sorry, I missed that.
The pattern will also be emailed to everyone.
Oh, who signed
But
up for the class?
Yeah, but it has, I've been sticking it in the chat.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm gonna put these back on my little display. I love having these in the background. They're just nice and colorful. I want you to know that what you see behind me is the absolute tidiest part of my studio. But even in the mess, you can see how I label everything. Got to keep track, right? Someone was talking about missing Bead Fest. Yeah, I know. Times are different, but we'll come back. Everybody be safe, wear your masks, especially to Michael's. Be nice to the people that work there. I'm moving these so you can see the beads again. Bring these out.
So whenever you're ready to wrap up, Leslie.
I'm ready. I guess I'm ready. You know, we love beads. I'm Leslie Rogalski, the creative director for the Beadsmith, here with the wonderful help of Leslie Pope. And one of my bosses is here too. So hopefully it was good. Thank you so much. Take care. Stay creative.